Welcome to this week's Deep Dive. This week we have the very amazing Denise Taschereau from Fairware. Welcome, Denise.
Hi.
So you are our choice this week because this week we actually talked about sustainability. And there is no better voice on sustainability in this industry than you. And so, of course, we pulled you into Promo Chat and we pulled you into the Deep Dive. So thank you for being part of this.
Yeah, no, it was fun, and it's funny because you hear people talk about promo chat, or see it referenced at common SKU events, and I never really knew what it was. I never participated, and you emailed me, and I'm like, sure, I'll do it, and I did a little research so I didn't screw up and look like the total newbie that I was. But it was a lot of fun, and I totally enjoyed it. So thanks for the ask to get me involved.
Good. Now we'll just keep bringing you in every week and sort of whenever we cover something, or just join us every week because it's fun. Well, okay, so all of your answers were amazing, and I highly suggest people go back and look at our questions and what Denise was giving you, because I spent way too much time on the Fairware. No, I spent the right amount of time, or not enough time, on the Fairware website afterwards, going through all their lookbooks and all their strategy and everything else. So we're going to narrow it down to one question, which was, here's a tough one. Let's say a client requests a product that you just know will end up in a landfill in less than a year. How do you handle that request? And you said, using a strategy first, product second approach usually helps in these situations. As others noted, having alternatives to add to the mix can help them pivot. You added to that with, this one is so hard. We try and sway people away from buying crap. We actually said in a client pitch recently, if you're looking for stress balls and fidget spinners, we're probably not your people. I think it caught them off guard, but they called us back. So there's a lot to sort of break down in that, but I have a question for you. So we were chatting before, and I kind of mentioned that when you started in this industry is sort of, or when I kind of started and started to take note of you guys, is that you were kind of seen as niche, that's so neat what Fairware is doing, they're focusing on the environment, how fun for them, and it was kind of oh, they're just they're in Vancouver, it kind of works with the ethos there. But you've blown up, and I think you've become a thought leader, but you've also we're ahead of the trend. If you go to Expo this year, there was so much on sustainable products, renewable resources, at least everyone had a feature showing off an eco product. So you've kind of been the forefront of this conversation. And how have you seen the industry change in that way? How have you kind of been, have you sat there smugly and been I've been right all along? Or or have you wanted to? What have you done in this case?
It's interesting to have watched it. It's super encouraging. I'd say the speed that things are changing in the last 2 to 3 years compared to the 15 years I've been in the industry is just so encouraging. And for us, we started with this ethos. We started because we saw a market gap. We started with a strategy to build a brand. We started with a strategy to build a North American-wide brand from the get-go. We had no intention of being a regional player or a smaller player. So it was kind of in the plan the whole way. We just saw a gaping hole in the market where brands that care were struggling to connect with suppliers of merchandise that would reflect the caring, or the values, or their sustainability, or kind of community impact goals. So that hasn't really changed for us at all. And what has changed is it's easier to source product that aligns with that. And it's become easier to have more transparent conversations with suppliers so that we can bring more story of where our suppliers and where the manufacturers are in this journey towards more kind of ethical, sustainable supply chains. So, in some ways it's gotten easier, in which is awesome, and it means that some of the other players, like competitors, are kind of catching up, or they're there too. And it's this weird sort of tension where we want the industry to move, but we want to keep our market differentiation, or we want to make sure we're consistently up front. So, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot. My business partner, Sarah, and I have been chatting about, and is sort of my focus for the year, is to really start thinking, okay, what's next in the marketplace? What's next in terms of offerings to get back out and kind of regain that space a few steps ahead of everyone. So that's really a big focus of ours right now. So it's been interesting to watch how the market has run. But we were talking a little bit earlier. I think one of the funniest things is we felt like people were a little bit like patting us on the heads, like, oh, you're such do-gooders, like you go girls, and kind of thinking we had this little thing out on the West Coast. And, I think, within probably 6 months of launching in Sarah's Garage, we were working with brands like Aveda and Ben and Jerry's. And, we just were keeping kind of quiet about it. And I think people just didn't understand our strategic play, and they didn't necessarily understand the market. So I think they felt like we were niche, but we knew all along that we were in for the long haul, and we were going after big brands, and it's worked.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And it is, at the beginning, you had this approach of B Corp, but now I think this is kind of what the industry is missing a little bit, is that the request for sustainability has been usually end user driven. It's not been distributor asked, or not all the time supplier pushed. And so it's interesting to see how your client base has changed in that way as well. It's sort of like people are going out and saying, I don't want plastic crap, essentially, is like.
Yeah, and it is a little bit unnerving right now to just look at that issue where we're sitting down with clients and they're saying, we're seeing clients where their spend is going down strategically because they want to give away less stuff. And we're trying to, scramble to make sure we're there with great product when they do buy product, or look at different offerings to kind of fill that gap so they can still connect with customers, or incent sales teams, or, celebrate staff with merchandise, but it lines up with their values, as opposed to doing nothing. Because we have some clients who are like, we're doing nothing, like it's all over. And you can get scared, you can be defensive, and get a little bit hysterical about it, or you can recognize that it's the future. And so we need to pivot as an industry, we need to pivot as distributors, and understand it as the opportunity that it could be, as opposed to the crisis that it could be. And I think, the Elizabeth Sagan Fast Company article on stop giving away $20 billion worth of terrible conference crap was a moment in time for our industry to take stock. And it was fascinating to see who dove into that conversation in a really mindful, contemplative way to talk about kind of the strategic implications, and who panicked and got defensive and was like, well, so we see that as those are the conversations we need to lean into, and those are the conversations we lean into with our clients, and we're not afraid of them. So which kind of leads us back to, what do you do when somebody says, I want a piece of crap to give away, and you're kind of at the other side of the table being like,
not that crap.
And it is a hard conversation. And I think a couple other people that responded to that answer talked about having other products. And I think that's really critical. Like, well, here's what it could look like if you did it differently. Or, if you didn't want that piece of low cost plastic that's destined for the landfill, like, here are some things that might add value. And my initial comment was the strategy first and product second. I think probably our biggest differentiator in how we've shown up in the marketplace is that we rarely start with product. Like, we rarely go to an initial meeting with anything except ourselves and our ideas. And we do it intentionally. I have an anecdote of going into pitch on a contract in Vancouver, a fairly big contract, and our competitor was in the room pitching before us. They had stacked the meetings, and we could kind of hear through the door what they were talking about. And then we could see as they came out, and they were schlepping, apparel and all sorts of things. And we panicked. We were like, oh my God, we don't have anything. We're doing this all wrong. And I remember we had an iPad, and I pulled up a bunch of supplier sites, and we kind of in the moment pretended that this was our approach. We were just going to show product, not bring product,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we walked in there and we're like, you know what? Product's easy. What you're trying to achieve and how we bring in a merchandise collection to help you achieve that is what's hard. And how are you going to distribute it to all these crazy locations you have all over our province and up north is what's hard. And how do you leverage your spend to generate savings and efficiency? Those are the hard conversations. Let's have those, and then let's go into the product assortment. And I think we've always taken that approach, and it tends to work for us. And when you take that approach, you usually don't get backed into that conversation of stress balls and fidget spinners.
To kind of show you like, what else can you do? It's that conversation away
Yeah.
from like, oh, I do t-shirts, to
Yeah.
I'm a solutions provider.
And we're also really blunt. Like, I think if you can just be honest with folks, sometimes they're not thinking about it. Um, and, just saying, this is a really hard product at end of life. So like, if you're giving it away, and, the other example, would be like beach balls, classic giveaway, summer giveaway. And they're vinyl, they're traditionally made offshore. They're often of quality that they're going to end up burst on the ground of the event that you're at in the moment, right? So
Yeah.
we'll just talk people through that. We'll say, yeah, that's a classic giveaway. Here's some of the risks with that giveaway. Its end of life is it's only landfill. There's no way to recycle that product. And because it's a durable, kind of material, when it inevitably gets left behind because it's burst, or because somebody wanted to use it while they were at the outdoor movie night, but they didn't really want to take it home, your brand is going to be sitting on the ground getting
Yeah.
trampled. And it's going to be this legacy reminder of what you value. And so maybe we could do something different for that event. Maybe we do popcorn stands where it's like a consumable. And so I think just having really frank conversations with folks and saying, have you thought through the experience for your brand from the beginning to the very, very end? And when you can bring that to folks, it'll get them being like,
Hmm.
you know we had it happen. We've had it happen where they're like, yeah, but we still want the vinyl beach balls. And we're like, okay, well, we can get them at a QCA approved vendor, and they're printed at a union shop in the Bronx, and it's like the best bad product that we can do. And we'll say that. We literally will say that to a client, like, here's, it's the best thing we can do. It's a, phthalate free PVC, and blah blah blah, and it's still a terrible product, but here you go. And
Yeah.
and that's when and in that scenario, we debriefed it at the end of the year, and the client's like, yeah, that was a bad idea, like exactly what you said was going to happen.
Yeah.
And we even gave them like little briefing notes and like, here's how you can talk about this bad product, here's the good bits about this bad product, and so that they'd have it if people asked about it during the event. But I think this is just collective learning, and I think it's collective learning with suppliers, with end users, with distributors, and I think part of the advice I often give to our sales rep and such is just have the courage to have those conversations. Like, you should have seen the face of one of my reps when we said in a meeting, and you mentioned it in an early treat, where we said, if you want stress balls and fidget spinners, we're probably not your people. And like one of our reps was like, wow, I don't know if I would have had the courage to say that. And it's kind of like, it's a little bit like we are who we are, and people are going to love us or leave us. And I don't, we don't want to be a brand that's going to work with folks that push us into selling the kind of product we don't believe in. So on some level, we have to hold our ground. And I think that's why some of North America's leading sustainable brands call us, because we'll call them out on kind of stuff, and we'll talk them out of buying product. And sometimes we don't get a job. They're like, you know what, you're right, we're not going to do anything. And in those moments it sucks, but that you're going to be the first callback. Like, when they do something, when they want to do something and they want to do it right, they're going to call you because you've just built enormous trust capital with that client. So it's a bit about being in for the long game, right? And if you cannot panic about losing the $3,000 trinket order, and play the long game with your accounts, I think it's a good way to go.
Yeah, no, it's kind of amazing that way. And like, I'm so glad people are following in your footsteps, and I hope they do it even more so, just because like, I had a conversation with someone recently about being authentic, and you and Sarah have stayed so authentic to like what it means to be a sustainable, eco-friendly operation. And like, I've been to your place and down to like your recycling bins, like you have so many recycling bins, and just so like you've put thought into everything that you do, and in the way that the world is changing in terms of caring. We should always be caring about sustainability, but caring about that way, and then caring about the stuff that we make, and the intention behind everything is that it's coming through and hopefully changes more than one person for it. So we don't become an industry of stuff, because it takes away the value of us as marketers and brand developers, is that left breast logo. It's boring and it's not thoughtful.
Exactly. And I think that, you mentioned our office. I think that's something that Sarah and I really try to communicate, is that it's not, like, it is not just about the product. And I think that's the biggest strategic error that this industry makes, and that suppliers make, and that distributors make. And in some ways it's like helped us be more successful, because it literally is not about the product. And like, you have to take a step back and really dig into the entire ethos of your brand and company and your supply chain partners and your client partners. And it's in all that you do. And it's whether it's for us, whether it's the eco stuff, we do a lot of work on the social side of sustainability, and not just the worker rights, but and inclusion. And like, what does that look like in our supply chain, in our client base, in our office?
Yeah. No, Kathy Chang from Redwood has talked about this a lot as well, is that for her, sustainability isn't just having an eco fabric, it's sustainable labor chain of fair wages, reducing waste, recycling water, of kind of looking at everything from the big holistic way. Is that, and that's another topic that came up in the chat, was about greenwashing, of just being like, it's eco, and it's like, without thinking of, again, the intention behind each thing. So what sort of research do you do to make sure that it's an eco product? Like, your website is an amazing resource for people looking for different information, but so beyond that, like, what would be one site or one information source that you would suggest?
I think I mentioned this in the chat. Although, I think I did a few tweets where I forgot to put the little hashtag. They find it. But for us, probably like the guiding light is the FTC guidelines on environmental marketing claims. And like, I think that's the most important document for our industry. I've sent snippets of it to suppliers when I feel like they're making false claims, and just like, hey, just FYI, like, your product doesn't comply with FTC guidelines on this. So classic would be somebody making, socks from bamboo, and you can't make a claim that your socks are bamboo socks. You'd have to say rayon from bamboo, and you have to put the actual, chemically formulated textile that is rayon, and that your input is bamboo, and being a little bit more transparent and clear about what it is, because that would be an example of the FTC guidelines. Another one that we pay a lot of attention to is recyclability claims. So on the recycled content side, that's one thing, but this is recycled, like recycle this, it's recyclable, or it's compostable, or it's biodegradable. All of those come with certain sets of criteria. In the case of compostability, biodegradability, there's actual standards. And in the case of recyclability, there's a framework that the FTC has put out that we pay heed to. And an example might be that polystyrene, like number stick, like styrofoam, is technically recyclable. There's, I think, 2 recyclers in Canada, for example, that recycle it, but in no way is it reasonably recyclable. In no way is it easy to recycle. And it would be very difficult for an end user to get that product into a recycling stream in any community in Canada or the US, for that matter. And so the FTC has guidelines around the percentage of people in the community that you distribute your product in that has to have easy access, like a blue box or community recycling drop-off, to be able to recycle something. So just because technically it's recycled somewhere in the world, you can't make a recyclable claim if somebody can't easily go and take something back. So I think those, that's really the key guideline for us that we look at. And then we have a lot of other, I think a lot of people don't understand is that we, or maybe they do, but, I used to be the sustainability director for, one of the largest outdoor retailers in Canada. I have a master's of applied science in this stuff. It's been my entire life. It's what my career was before I launched our company. And we hire into our company people who are very, very, passionate about this. I'm in Brooklyn right now, in New York, and we have staff here. And the account manager that we hired in New York comes from sustainable fashion and has worked and kind of dedicated his career to date to sustainability, and in particular in the fashion industry. And like that's who we bring in. So our entire company is experts,
Yeah.
It's all we do, right? So it's people are like, oh, how do you do all this, and how do you do research? And it's like it's our lives. Like we do it at home, and we do it at work, and we do it. It's what we do.
Yeah.
So
It's fun for you, and the bonus is it works well for work too.
yeah, and it's always been it's how we started the company. We've been doing it for 15 years, so it's not new for us.
Yeah. Well, and I think, sort of to wrap up the podcast is one of the things that I really like the conversation moving on sustainability is how to make changes in your life on different things, and that you guys have lived it for so long that it's, a second nature to do the base part. Like I remember a distributor sent out a press release about putting recycling bins in in their kitchen. And I was, okay, I mean, that's a start. It's going to start to change some behaviors. And the same with the straw, like the plastic straw ban was that everyone is going, well, it's not really helping a lot. It adds a little bit, but the attitude is it's changing a behavior and it's making people more thoughtful. So do you have one lifestyle sustainability tip to try and get people to be more conscious of and to change their behavior?
I'm gonna hack that question. I do have lots of lifestyle behavior change things that I could talk about. And to your point, I think they're important, but I don't think we're going to recycle our way out of the pickle we're in globally. And I don't think we're going to behavior change our way out of this pickle that we're in globally. So if I could wave a magic wand and have everyone do one thing, I would be asking business leaders in our industry and owners and employees in every aspect of our industry to get engaged in calls for political action on policy. So I would suggest that you support your local climate strikes. I would suggest that you work at the municipal and state level in the US right now, not federal, hopefully federal after November. In Canada, work in all levels and ask your decision makers and political leaders to consider progressive climate policy, because I think it's going to take those levers being pulled to shift the course globally. Yeah. So that's what I would ask people to do. It's not change behavior, but take action politically and let your local elected officials know that the future is important, and laying out progressive policy in both of our nations would be the way to go. So that would be my ask. Just ask. If you want to know how to do it, ask me.
Just a tiny little bit.
Very specific asks you could make.
I was thinking like riding a bike, but you've just thrown down the gauntlet for everyone there, Denise. Well done.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, go start and try and change the world. You have a voice, now use it. And Denise, where can we find you on the internet?
I think the Fairware, if you follow me personally, you're just going to see a lot of like bike photos and my children. So I think
photos.
I think at Fairware on Insta and Twitter. Twitter in particular, we have a lot of like thought leadership content that goes out there. Insta, if you want to see what we're doing for clients or product ideas and the campaigns that we're supporting. Facebook for a bit of both. And then our website. And, we have a lot of resources and lookbooks. And, we'd love a collective voice in the industry asking similar questions of the supply chain, because I think if we're all asking for it, then suppliers are more likely to respond.
Yeah, don't just wait for your client to ask for the green option. Make sure they're doing it so you can present a green option, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I do second the going to Fairware site. They do have an amazing breakdown for different processes, and not just ecological sourcing, but sustainable and what that means entirely. So thank you, Denise, for joining us. Remember, everyone, to join on Promo Chat every week on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And thank you to our sponsors, Maple Ridge Farms. Thank you, Denise.
Thanks. Cheers.